So I stopped doing the income reports and I stopped reflecting and I stopped seeing any of my mind trashy thoughts. Like, just even the reason to stop doing them was like a pile of gold underneath a pile of mind trash that was going to like show me, here's everything that's about to go wrong for you.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alicia St. Germain, and I'm here with my business bestie, as she calls me. I feel funny saying bestie because bestie isn't a word that I would use. Shannon Mattern. And I'm really excited to have her on today because at the end of last week's podcast, I was talking to you about how where you invest your money, when you are tracking your finances and you understand not just on a compliance standpoint once a year where your expenses have gone, but you're actually tracking them on a monthly basis, it really exposes your mindset. And Shannon, you are the person that actually several years ago, when I started following you, started to help me expose something I didn't realize about myself regarding financing. And Shannon has a podcast. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about what she does in the world. But Shannon has a podcast and she does these monthly income reports. You're so transparent. It's so awesome. But I was always in awe of how you just understood the numbers and you just the way you explained things and the way you linked it back to your mindset. So that's what I want to talk a little bit more about today and get some of your insight on. But before we dive into that, please tell us a little bit more about what you do in the world. What is your little piece of the pie?
Well, first, Alicia, just thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. I love the show and I'm really honored to be here as a guest after listening to every single episode and wishing that I hadn't started from the beginning so I could binge them. I would get so sad when I have to wait another week for another episode to come out. So thank you so much for having me here. And so I'm Shannon Mattern. I am the host of the Profitable Web Designer podcast. I'm a business coach for women web designers, and we help women web designers package, price, position, and sell profitable web design projects. And a key component of that is the mindset behind what we think about money, about marketing, about other people and clients and boundaries and all of those things. So I call it like a benevolent bait and switch. I'm like, oh, I'm going to teach you strategy. But really, actually, it's what you think about all of that that determines if you're going to achieve your goals or stay stuck or have it be, as Alicia so beautifully describes it, as like flying coach stuck, piled up with all of your stuff and like super uncomfortable in the back of the plane, or going first class and having the journey be fun. So so that's what I do. And I started my business back in 2014 as a freelance web designer. And I did not know how to have boundaries with clients. I didn't know how to charge. It was a hot mess. And then I pivoted from a place of, I don't know how to handle this, so I'm going to try this instead, to teaching business owners how to DIY their website. I thought, oh, that'll solve my problems. I'll just won't work directly with the clients. I'll teach everybody how to do it for free and earn money off the back end through affiliate commissions, through like the products that I recommended in my training to teach people how to build a website. And of course, that worked for a while till it didn't, because all of those issues, you can't escape them for long until they pop back up.
You just take them to your pivot. You take whatever wasn't working before into the new pivot, and then...
I was like, oh yeah, let me stuff all these issues in this closet until the closet can't like hold it anymore, and the door bursts open and then they all come out. But back then I started a different podcast called Pep Talks for Side Hustlers. And I was really inspired by Pat Flynn of the Smart Passive Income podcast, who by then was making like millions of dollars every single month. But he shared an income report on his podcast about, here's how we made our money and here's what we spent. And at that time, I think it was like 2017, people loved to talk about how much money they made, but nobody talked about how much money they spent. And Pat was one of the ones that talked about how much money he spent. And I thought, this is really inspiring to me, but I'm making hundreds, maybe thousands a month at this point in my journey. Maybe I could document that. And like, it was a marketing tactic back then. And then it turned into something so much more, however many years later, through another pivot to, I'm going to mentor freelance web designers instead of teaching the end business owner how to DIY. So long story longer, that's how I got here to where I'm at today.
So let me start with, you had a hard time with boundaries and things like that with clients. But, and this is what I talk about, everybody has a different stopping point, a different thing. But my experience of you has always been that you are so willing to be vulnerable, so willing to like just reach out to other people to help them along the way. Maybe you didn't ask for help, but like you would help anybody. You're so generous. You always have been so generous with information, with resources, with anything you could give to help someone. So when you started doing the income reports, what was the benefit? You did it as a marketing tactic. What did you discover in the process of getting started in doing that?
Yeah, so I did it as a marketing tactic, and it was because I was also at the time, I'm like, I'm going to teach you how to build your website and market your business. And here's how I'm making money to show you how you could also do that, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was really the driver of it. But then I started to notice like, oh, as I am writing these, right? As I'm going through the process of like pulling together the income and adding up the expenses and seeing what I'm spending money on and like sitting down to actually write it, like all of the thoughts that are happening behind the scenes, like my thoughts about how much money I made, my thoughts about what I spent the money on. And in the beginning, my business was growing every single month. So it was so fun and exciting to be like, oh my gosh, like I had a great month. Here's how much I made. Here's how much I spent. I was like so proud of myself in writing that. And I was like, I've got this. Like, I've got this business thing down. Now I want to figure out how to like multiply this. And that was like where my focus was. But like in the beginning, I didn't find it hard at all to write those income reports because I was like, I feel like I'm making good decisions. Like my mind's like, I had a soundtrack behind writing them. I didn't even realize I had it. I was just like, oh yeah, this is super fun. And it doesn't always stay. Your trajectory isn't always up, and up. And so, yeah, it's interesting to get to reflect in hindsight about like what my thoughts were when I started it. And I took a hiatus at a point that I didn't realize was like driven by negative thoughts either. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no. So it was easy because times were good.
Yeah.
And then there was a point in your business where you didn't do them anymore because you shifted focus, right? And so what happened when you stopped? And I'm comparing this, everyone. So every single month, Shannon is such the perfect example for you of when you track your finances and everything is good. That's not really the points that expose you call it mind trash. It cracks me up that I hear you call it mind trash, but your mindset, like whatever is sabotaging yourself, whatever thoughts are getting in the way, whatever old money habits you have, when times are good and there's money is plentiful, you won't see those things necessarily as obvious. But when things shift or something tough comes up, that is where our biggest growth happens. So when you made the decision to stop tracking monthly, I mean, I knew you still kept your books up to date, but you weren't doing all the reflection and analysis. What happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I'd write my income reports would be like, here's how much money we made this month. Here's what we spent. Here's everything that happened this month. And here's all the lessons I learned along the way. And so I did that for my Pep Talks for Side Hustlers podcast. And then I made the decision that I'm like, okay, I'm going all in on coaching women web designers. And with that comes a pivot to the podcast. And I had grown my team at that point too. I'd hired 2 employees. So it was no longer like subcontractors. Now I have employees. And I couldn't have identified this at the time. At the time, I had a really logical reason to stop doing income reports. The logical reason was I am now coaching women web designers to grow their business as a freelance one-on-one service provider. How I make and spend money is no longer relevant to that audience because I'm not working one-on-one with people anymore. I'm running a business coaching program. So I couldn't figure out how. I was just like, well, how much I'm making, how much I'm spending, it's not really relevant to my audience anymore. Now I have a team, and there was a sense of like, I wanted to put a veil over that because I didn't want my employees to worry if I was having like hard times. I was like, I don't know that I need them to see the balance sheet that I'm putting out on the podcast every single month, because what if they get worried about their jobs? Or what if, like, on the flip side, I mean, I'm going to be really transparent here. What if they are like, she's making all this money, I deserve a bigger piece of the pie? And so I had all of these thoughts that I'm like, well, it just makes sense to not do this anymore because it's a new podcast. And here's all these reasons not to do it. So I stopped doing the income reports, and I stopped reflecting, and I stopped seeing any of my mind trashy thoughts. Like, just even the reason to stop doing them was like a pile of gold underneath a pile of mind trash that was going to like show me, here's everything that's about to go wrong for you in, in 2023.
Mm-hmm. And so you started, like, how did you start spending your money? This is where I want to like dig in. Everyone is, last week I said, where you spend a majority of your money, it can be strategic, but it's also a place to ask yourself, why am I investing my money here? What is this for? What am I trying to fix? What's the problem, or what's the thing I'm trying to throw money at? So where did you start finding that you were spending a lot of your money during that time when you weren't doing income reports in hindsight?
Yeah. So I would say at the decision of I'm no longer doing income reports, my last income report, my sign off was like a 2022 year in review. And it was my first $500,000 year. So it was like signing off at the highest of the high place of my business. I was so proud. We had made like $499,950 or something like that, like just shy of 500,000. And I was so proud of that. I was like, oh, this is going to just keep going forever. Right. And I'm like, I had this goal of making $1 million in a year, and then 3, and then 5. And so at the time I stopped doing income reports, my money went to hiring. So growing my team, adding 1.5 positions. So like a full-time and a part-time position. One was a marketing and operations coordinator, and another was client success. I also started spending money on ads. So I hired a Facebook ads expert and started spending money on Facebook ads to try to like grow and scale my audience that way. I hired a YouTube ads expert company to mentor me on YouTube ads and like make a YouTube video and do all of this strategy. So at this point, I was like, I shifted into like, okay, like I've reached this level of success. Now let's just like dump a bunch of money into scaling this. But what I wasn't seeing was that our income was starting to slow down. And so I just kept throwing money after, like, had I been doing income reports upon reflection, I would have noticed the rising anxiety in the income is slowing down. We're not getting as many people joining. I'm just like, I just got to get more people in the door. There was like such a feeling of hustle and anxiety behind that. And I guess the pinnacle of that was my revenue had slowed to the point where I was like, I need to hire a coach to help me through this. Like, I must be really bad at sales. So I enrolled in a really high level coaching program to help me with sales and spent a year in that program. And that was a significant investment. And I'm so glad I did it. But what I got out of it was not what was on the sales page, which I always say, like, you always get what you are meant to get out of any of those things. So it was driven by an anxious need to grow, when in hindsight, I didn't need to grow. I could have just had another $500,000 a year and that would have been amazing.
Mm.
But I wasn't thinking. I was just like foot on the gas. Here's what I am seeing out there in the business space that is the next step. Like, you get to this place and then you scale.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you were listening? I'm curious, like, what were you trying to fill? Do you know what you were trying to fill in that? You said I could have easily had another $500,000 a year and that would have been amazing. But what was it that you have now reconciled, or have you yet, about why you needed to go for the $1 million? Or
that is such an interesting question. I have not reconciled that yet. I would be so curious not to like ask you questions on your podcast, but you know me and you've been with me through that whole journey. Do you have any insights about what it could have been?
Well, so it's interesting because you're really, really good at, the whole time I've ever known you, you have this like, you're such a sweet person who cares about other people. So on the surface level, I think you would have told yourself at the time, if I remember, is like, I want to help more people. And having $1 million business means I'm helping more people.
I mean, that's always the reason why I want to do this. Why I wanted to leave the faux security of corporate to go out on my own is because I really do love helping other people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I lost sight of that year, though. I feel like that's why I'm like, nope, that doesn't sound right as to why I wanted to go after those big numbers.
Yeah.
That does not resonate.
I think that's what you would have said.
That's what my ego may have said. I don't know what the real reason was. I think that I was just trying to create some sense of safety for myself in money. And I hadn't yet learned the lesson that money doesn't create safety.
What does?
My own personal resilience and being willing to receive the support of the people around me that love me.
Mm. And your ability, your brain, your ability to make money.
Oh, yeah. Like my ideas, my ability to put those ideas out there, be vulnerable, but also the resilience to like know that like if it all went away, I'd still be okay.
Right. Right. So you figure out, just kind of going back through. So you figure out like you've invested heavily, and this happens all the time to people who are successful. They get to a certain level of success, and I see it in so many businesses. So you think you've figured out the formula.
Yeah.
And now all we have to do is put more into the funnel and we should get a higher output. And it doesn't, because honestly, markets shift, right? Because the time that you were like really booming, really had it all figured out, you also had a really captive audience because it was during the pandemic when everybody was forced to be home and then online. And it was like, oh, I can't go to work. So now they're investing in their work from home businesses, which is what you're primed for. And by the way, if the thing about Shannon and being a business coach for web designers and digital service providers, I don't know if I'm saying that in quite the right way, but you also work with anybody who does design or any kind of thing that's the web design adjacent space. But you and I coach the same things, even in different businesses, right? So it's always about how do you find your clients? How do you make your offers? How do you price things? What are your money mindset things that come up? It's literally the same stuff, no matter what industry you're in. And we try to make it like it's different, but it's not. So I always get a ton of value just from listening to your income reports every month now that they're back. And I think you get so much feedback. Those are your favorite episodes, right?
Oh, yeah. They're my favorite episodes to write, but like they are the highest downloaded, most listened to.
Yeah.
Most popular thing that I do in my business. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the business breaks, the market shifts. And this happens where something changes in the market. And when you're not attached and tracking your numbers and noticing like that revenue is going down, is it something I'm doing? Or is it something that has changed outwardly in the marketplace? There's a shift in demand. There's a shift in something that's going on and you're not tracking that. Then you miss it and you're a little bit late. So what made you decide to bring income reports back?
Yeah. So I definitely missed. I'm just like, yes, everything you said. Yes, that is exactly what happened. And so I got to a point in my business where I'm like, okay, I actually, before I decided to bring income reports back, I got to a crossroads where I'm like, I can't afford to pay my team and pay myself also. But I still think that I'm going to be able to save all of this. And I'm just not going to pay myself for a few months while I dig out of this hole. And I'm going to save everything. And I won't have to have any hard conversations or make any tough decisions. So I didn't pay myself for 3 months. At the end of that 3 months, it became very clear that we needed to like restructure our pricing to create the revenue that we wanted to create. Because we'd also done a price increase in the midst of all of this. Because I didn't have my eye on the monthly income reports, I've made all kinds of decisions that in hindsight, I'm like, had I been keeping... I don't know if I wouldn't have made some of them. I might. I don't know. I can't say the income reports would have prevented me from all of the mistakes that I made, but I just kept making wrong move or move that created unwanted results after one after another. And so I got to the point where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to have to lay off a team member because it's either the business or this employee. I can no longer afford to like sustain the business and pay this person. And I got to a point where I felt so ashamed because I'm like, people are coming to me to grow their businesses and I am suffering behind the scenes, just trying to like keep it all together. And I felt like the biggest fraud. And I went to an in-person retreat with some of my students, my more advanced students. And it got brought up, and you may have brought it up too, Alicia, I'm not sure. Like, oh, you used to do these income reports. How come you don't do them anymore? I think what people are missing from you is the authenticity, the connection, and the vulnerability. And you used to do that instead of just talking about undercharging, over delivering, pricing mindset for other people. You used to also talk about it for yourself too. And that's when I was like, oh, I didn't realize the extent to which I had been hiding and struggling with all of the things that were going on. And I was like, okay, I need to bring these back for me. It wasn't for a marketing tactic. It wasn't for getting more students in my program. It wasn't to save my business. It was to be like, I need to look at this through the lens of, what are my thoughts about my income? What are my thoughts about my expenses? Where am I piling mind trash on mind trash by shaming myself about my thoughts about it? And just talk through how I was feeling about everything. So I brought income reports back, which almost was like a debut of them on the new podcast, but I kind of like gave the backstory, and I've been doing them ever since. And it's just very cathartic for me to talk about everything that happened and now be able to kind of notice when I'm like trying to throw good money after bad is like a top level way of saying like what I noticed that I was doing before.
Well, and how often this happens all the time where someone, especially if you're dealing with imposter syndrome and you're feeling inadequate in business, or you're feeling like you're not knowledgeable enough, and it's 100% in your head, because it's not like we all have to already know everything, which is kind of what you were doing when you're hiding, is like, well, I have to know everything. I have to have all the answers and have never had any bad things happen to me in order to be qualified to coach these women. And so you start throwing money into more strategy, trying to turn things around, trying to save everything. And so when you look at those pieces in your business, when you keep buying additional strategies, I know a lot of your people, I mean, my people do that too. It's like, well, I'll get this strategy and that's going to solve my time problem, or I'll get this strategy and it's going to solve the problem that this over here was too complicated, but this over here looks easier. And so you just keep bringing the same imposter syndrome or the same whatever big assumption or belief that you have had the whole time. So I just think it's so fascinating, and I think it's awesome that you do it publicly. But what you do, anybody, as you're tracking your books month to month, could be going through and saying, how much came in? How much went out? What are my feelings about this? What am I making this mean? And so I think that that's a really powerful set of questions that you ask yourself every single month. So I noticed in your podcast that you changed it from income and expenses to inflow and outflow. Can you tell me where that came from?
Yeah. So I think I changed it from like revenue and expenses
to
revenue to investments. This has been like an iteration. I used to talk about like income and expenses. And then I was like, revenue and investments. And the way I wanted to think about the money going out was that if it is leaving my business, I am thinking about it being like, I don't want to think about my team as an expense. My team is an investment. Like money I spend on them should be creating more money. My web hosting, accounting would tell you that's a business expense. I say that it's an investment in bringing me more customers. So that's the lens through which I wanted to look at what was going out. Like I should be able to look at every single one of these things and know how it's making me more money, instead of like, oh, it's money gone forever. And if I can't see how it is an investment, then I get to question whether it belongs there. Well, then I noticed that I was having a lot of just resistance to even writing my income reports at certain months, maybe when it was like a slower month or my outflow was like my investments were more than my revenue or my income that month. And I noticed like, oh, the way I'm thinking about this, like my underlying thoughts about this is causing me to have a fight, flight, freeze response and not take action to actually write this. And I'm like, I'm thinking of revenue as something I earned, and I didn't do a good job if there's not enough there. Like I'm just noticing all of these thoughts, and the investments or the expenses feeling just like, am I making the right decision? Like so much pressure on these things. And I just decided a way to talk about that would not activate my nervous system as much, so I could have a clear mind and see the thoughts and really gather the knowledge from it, would be to go even more neutral with what is happening. So inflow is just money flowing in, outflow is money flowing out, overflow is if more came in than went out, and reserves is if less went out than came in, like, and just to try to neutralize it for myself so that when I sat down to write these income reports, I could have more mental capacity available to me to really see what they're trying to show me when I'm noticing my thoughts about all of the things that are happening.
So how did you, this is one of the questions that often comes up for people is, how do I connect to that? How do I know what I'm feeling? How did you get to this point where you can now dissect and go through these income reports with so much to find all the gold that's buried underneath the mind trash?
Yeah. So I think it just starts with like, oh, I notice I'm thinking. I notice I'm thinking. I notice I'm thinking. So I will sit down and open up my laptop and pull up the numbers, and I'll see like whatever happened in the month of December, for example. And I'll have a feeling, maybe my chest will get tight or whatever. And I'll be like, oh, I notice I'm thinking that wasn't enough. Or I notice I'm thinking I spent too much money that month. Or I notice I'm thinking like I won't be able to do this thing in the future. It's all starts with I notice I'm thinking. So usually I have a lot of thoughts while I'm writing it. And then I just try to like kind of get into like neutral, like, let me look at my calendar. Let me look at everything that happened last month. And then it just kind of flows out of me. I'm like, oh, I think it's more of like when I feel resistance to explore, to like when I get to something that I'm like, oh, and I feel tight, I'm like, I really need to actually dig into this. Because if I close my laptop and walk away or say that this isn't relevant to my audience or I don't want to talk about this, that's when I know I need to talk about it.
When you feel resistance, that's when I need to expose it, right? And here's the thing that I know about Shannon, that she has always been so responsible with her thinking and her feeling. Even if you weren't ready to hear it, you were never, like, I never experienced you as defensive, or it might bounce off. It'd be like, I might say something to you or someone says something to you and you're like, no, I don't think that's what it is. And then, a year and a half later, she'll come back and be like, you said this to me, and I think this is what it is. And so you will always, though, kind of allow the seed to get planted. And you're so responsible with looking at yourself as the ultimate source of things that are happening around you. And I think that really, really helps. Plus, you've also invested in the internal work. And, Shannon's has gone through and done immunity to change, if you've been listening to us for any amount of time, you know, immunity to change is a really foundational piece of the coaching that I use. So if you've gone through and done that work, so you know already that a lot of your big assumptions relate to being smart or worrying about being seen as not smart, and then also being liked. And so with having that insight on what your big assumption is, do you think that helps you to identify where those thoughts come from?
Oh, for sure. Yes. And it's fascinating to think about how I can tie my big assumptions like directly to where I'm spending my money. Because if I think that I have to have all of the answers to be safe and I have to whatever, like, of course I'm going to invest in like a coaching program that teaches me strategy so that I can know exactly what to do, which I could say that that's what I put my money into it, but that's not what I needed. So that's kind of where it's like, oh, my unacknowledged and unchecked big assumptions sent me in a direction that was not the right direction for my business. And had I had any awareness of that, I do think that I could have been like, oh, actually, these resources get to be invested here. And I'm totally avoiding this because that feels too risky to my nervous system to actually, instead of paying someone to teach me how to do it all, to actually invest in support so that I'm no longer the one doing it all. And that felt too risky. And I was unaware of having my foot on the brake in that place. And so I can look back through, I call it my no good, very bad year, but it was a year that I learned so much about myself.
Your no good, very bad year. That's cute. I was just listening earlier about how we as humans in our current society, we're programmed to believe that uncomfortable emotions are unacceptable and bad. Instead of just like sitting with them and being in them, we have to try to numb them, fix them, just keep pouring money on them to try to make that bad feeling go away. And sometimes it's just sitting in it. And I think that's what you do now in your monthly income reports, now that you've realized it's okay for me to have uncomfortable feelings and sit with them. And I don't always have to solve them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's helpful to let them marinate for a while because trying to fix them is numbing. Like you said, it's like, oh, if I think something shouldn't be happening, I go immediately into fix it mode. I actually miss the lesson.
So what is it trying to tell me? What do I need to learn from this?
Yeah.
So I'm not here to tell you start a podcast and start doing monthly income reports, but off of what we talked about in last week's podcast, which I'll link here, when I talk about in that podcast, I talk about my girlfriend. This is the girlfriend, Shannon, that also is the refugee from the other bookkeeping company that we had to deal with that over the holidays. And we had it all figured out, which ultimately both of us have landed in exactly where we want to be. It's a better fit. In a way, I look at that experience as it was a gift to just bring forward more of this financial focus for 2025. And I wanted to bring you on because I know that you had experienced so much through, I think you were still tracking, but you weren't doing the reflection through that whole period.
I would say that I even got lax on my looking at the numbers. Like I'd look at my bank account and my like credit card balance, but I wasn't looking at line by line, like where is this going? What do I think about this? And like really sitting down to give myself the couple hours that it takes me to reflect. It's like a sacred time for me to like make sure, am I making decisions that are like in line with my values and vision for this company too? and for where I want my life to go. And yeah, it's a gift I give myself to do it every single month. I don't think of it as like a safety mechanism or I need to keep my eye on things so that I can be ahead of some trends. I think that that's a great outcome of doing it, but I do it to check in with myself and make sure I'm still in alignment with what I'm here to do.
I think that is so important. And if you're somebody who thinks that you don't have time to do this, please let Shannon's story and journey be I don't want to say warning, but this is what happens when you don't take the time. Originally took the time from a marketing standpoint. I feel like that's always been your trajectory, is you have a really good strategic reason for doing something, and then you learn something from it, and then you find out the real value of what you were doing. So it's always so fascinating to watch your journey. But my point being, when she took her foot off the gas and she took that sacred time off the calendar for herself, how much it actually cost you, far more than the time that it takes you to do them. And so if I could give you one action item, everyone, it's instead of avoiding what you make your money inflow and outflow mean and trying to avoid having to really look at that, sit in those uncomfortable feelings, start to just look at some of those things that you're doing and analyzing, what am I thinking about this? What's my reasoning for this? This is going to reveal what hard conversations you're avoiding. It's going to reveal why you made the decision to invest the way that you did. And then you get to challenge what else could be true? What else is possible here? What's logical here? Or what am I just trying to maybe soothe? So Shannon, I thank you so much for being here and always being so vulnerable. It's so fun to always do anything with you. Shannon's going to be with us on a retreat in Phoenix. So I'm sure we'll have you back on to talk about your experience there. Any last words you would leave everyone with?
First, thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you about this. And I think the other thing that I would say is that I love doing the reflection time on my own, but I can't see all the things myself through my own eyes that other people can see. And so that's why I put myself in rooms with people like Alicia, in spaces where I want people to please notice what I'm not noticing and show me. Because I think that that also is a key piece of being able to see more clearly and reflect more clearly on my own reflections, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes you can't always see that. And if anybody wants to go listen to these income reports, because they are fantastic, and Shannon is she's such a delight, and you learn so much, and it doesn't matter what business you're in. She just makes you think. So where would they find you?
Yeah, they can just go to webdesigneracademy.com/podcast. There'll probably be the most recent one just right there on that page. And then from there, you'll see just a category where you can click on income reports and you'll see all of the past ones. And you can subscribe to the podcast there if that's something that interests you, or you can just listen to the income reports and kind of see the journey that we're talking about on this podcast.
The other thing I'd add, because I get asked this all the time, and I see this all the time in different little groups that I'm in, is does anybody know of someone who can help me with my website? Does anybody know of a designer? Does anybody know this? Shannon is my go-to person. I say, who in your program? Who do you know that does this? And she has someone who's techie in just about anything that she could refer you to. So I think you also have, don't you have a directory or something or are you working on? I thought you were.
We are revamping our directory. So if it is up and ready, when you're listening to this, it will be there. But if not, feel free to reach out to me via email. And, I'm happy to let our group of amazing, brilliant women web designers know about your project and connect you with the right people.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Shannon, and everyone. I'm sending you so much love. And of course, if Jonathan were here, he would say, be well. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.